crypto is many different things. That's what people don't realize. So like some crypto, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many others are probably more like commodities. They're not controlled by any one person, anyway, there's people who want to raise money for a company. That sounds more like a security. That should be regulated by the SEC. Commodities are regulated by the CFTC. Then there's some cryptocurrencies which are more like currencies, like stable coins and central bank digital currencies. And those are probably, should be regulated by the Treasury or someone like that.
The worst case scenario would, of course, be just like people suddenly, flipping and going into moral panic mode and just, oh my God, like this technology is used by insert bad group of the day.
Can government agencies seize a person's cryptocurrency by forcing Coinbase to hand it over?
U ovom videu Brian Armstrong, osnivač Coinbase Menjačnice, i Vitalik Buterin, koosnivač Ethereuma, govore o regulaciji kripta koja nas uskoro očekuje. Pogledajte video do kraja i saznajte kako se regulacija može odraziti na cenu kriptovaluta, koje su to poteškoće, ali i dobre strane koje regulacija donosi, šta je potrebno da jedan token izađe na neku od menjačnica i još mnogo toga. Ovaj video sponzorisan je od strane Kripto Unity-a, startup projekta naših ljudi sa Balkana. Kripto Unity platforma, za razliku od mnogih ostalih menjačnica, pruža interfejs jednostavan za korišćenje sa tehnologijom hladnog novčanika, takozvanog cold walleta za bezbedno skladištenje kriptovaluta. Njihova kriptovaluta KAT, token menjačnice, je trenutno u pretprodaji i još uvek se može kupiti po sniženoj ceni, koja se svake nedelje do kraja pretprodaje povećava. Svi naši pratioci koji odluče da kupe preko linka koji se nalazi u opisu videa dobijaju bonus od 5% KAT tokena.
What are the regulations like? What is the level of understanding with regulators? What are they worried about? What are they thinking about? What are the positive and what are the negative regulations that you're facing?
So I'd say one trend that's positive is that basically regulators around the world are more and more, over the last 5 years, I would say, it's more and more common to find a regulator today asking, how can we preserve the innovation potential of this technology while keeping the bad actors out, than it was 5 years ago, where they were saying, this is all bad activity, how do we prevent it? And so maybe this is...
When you say more and more,
mm-hmm.
What fraction?
Okay, so I'll give you like a US specific example, although we operate in many countries. So when I go to DC now, I would say, 50, 60% of the people who I meet with are basically, they're in the camp of crypto has a lot of potential. We should regulate it to make sure the bad people don't do something bad with it. But this is here to stay and it has a lot of upside. We should basically create thoughtful regulation and celebrate it and actually encourage this innovation to happen in the US. That's a huge change from just 3 years ago, where it was probably 30% of people saying that. Now it's like 60, it's like almost double. It's getting harder to find like true crypto skeptics in DC. I'd say that, maybe only like 20 or 30% of people are like willing to say something negative. Like they actually think it's net negative. It's really hard to defend that position at this point, because almost like 1 in 5 Americans have used or tried crypto at this point. So you're kind of condemning 20% of your fellow citizens if you say that at this point. Especially with NFTs and all these things, like a huge segment of people who don't even care about investing or whatever came into the space. So, and then basically that same conversation is happening, but delayed by a few years in like India and Europe and in some Asian countries. And some countries have really embraced crypto, and they're like trying to really, they're ahead of where the US is, because they're trying to actually attract the best startups and entrepreneurs, like Dubai and the UK and Australia, and all are kind of pushing good regulation. El Salvador actually, I guess, adopted it as like Bitcoin as a legal tender. There was another country, Central African Republic, I think, that supposedly did that as well. But, there's countries like China that are more autocratic, that are saying, hey, this is a threat to our power, and like we're going to try to really curtail it.
So what kind of regulations are there that you feel the most that are limiting or that are empowering? Like, is there specific examples?
Yeah. Okay. So, basically, I think the securities laws in the US need to be clarified about there's crypto is many different things. That's what people don't realize. So like some crypto, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many others are probably more like commodities. They're not controlled by any one person. Anyway, there's people who want to raise money for a company. That sounds more like a security. That should be regulated by the SEC. Commodities are regulated by the CFTC. Then there's some cryptocurrencies which are more like currencies, like stable coins and central bank digital currencies. And those are probably, should be regulated by the Treasury or someone like that. And then there's another category of cryptocurrencies which are none of those things. They're NFTs, like artwork, or they're metaverse items, or decentralized identity and voting. And so I think that there's a very unhelpful point of view out there by some folks, which is, hey, most of this is like bad activity. We need to shut it down. So we're just going to pursue enforcement actions or something like that. Most people in DC don't feel that way anymore. And I think the people of the US don't feel that way anymore, because a lot of them are using this stuff. And their general view is there's a lot of upside potential here. We can all agree, let's get rid of the fraud and the scams. We all want to get rid of that. So let's create a relatively simple test, which says, if it's like nobody controls more than 20% of it or some threshold, it probably is more like a commodity. If someone's raising money they're selling this thing for a business, then it's probably a security. And then, if it's more like a medium of exchange, it's a currency. And if it's none of those things, maybe it's artwork or whatever. A legal test like that would help clarify which regulator is regulating what. And then, we also want to have probably like a sandbox for innovation, where if you're a startup and you're doing less than, I don't know, some number, less than some amount of payment volume or customer funds you're storing, it's like, just let those things get off the ground without a soul-crushing amount of legal bills, and uncertainty. So if the US can get there, that would be great. I think a bunch of other countries now are rushing around the world to sort of create that regulation that it does attract innovation. And so in the international bodies like IMF and G20 and stuff, they're starting to look at proposed regulation. I hope that Coinbase and a bunch of other crypto companies can help in that conversation too. We have a whole policy effort. I think actually crypto policy efforts are like probably one of the biggest things in DC right now. So it moves slow at the speed of government, but yeah. And in the meantime, we're just trying to help more and more people use crypto, because ultimately that's what in the democracies, that's what they care about. Like, they'll do what the people of the country want.
When it comes to government regulation of crypto, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario?
The best case is that blockchains continue to prosper and we figure out scalability so that people can actually start doing things on all of the amazing use cases that people have been talking about, instead of today where a lot of the great stuff gets priced out because transaction fees are at $5 to $10. And then we see a lot of different amazing applications happening on blockchains. It could be like DAOs creating new ways for people to interact and organize with each other, new ways for artists to get funded, and just all sorts of these amazing things. And there's just enough public support and just enough people that see that, look, crypto is clearly doing a lot of good things. And there are definitely areas where there's tensions, but there's areas where there's tensions, like there could be some kind of creative and interesting approaches that get figured out, right? Like, the concept of corporate taxes, for example, right? Like, that would disappear as a revenue stream if theoretically corporations just all get replaced by DAOs. But like maybe there's some other creative way by which DAOs themselves can kind of be have some kind of encoded governance that ensures that they have at least some kind of bias towards serving the global public good. And maybe it does enough of DAOs can do enough of that people are happy with it. And there are going to be things that people are unhappy about. There's always going to be the people that wants to surveil everyone. But if on the kind of effect of crypto from just empowering people is greater than that and greater than that in a way that people can just easily see, then that would be a good scenario, right? And we'll just become kind of incorporated and accepted the same way as happened with the internet. The worst case scenario would, of course, be just like people suddenly, flipping and going into moral panic mode and just, oh my God, like this technology is used by insert bad group of the day. And then I don't think governments have the ability to ban crypto to the extent of just preventing blockchains from existing, but they definitely have the ability to really marginalize it, right? Like if you just ban all exchanges, and ban all links from the fiat ecosystem to crypto, and you ban all kind of mainstream employers from accepting or paying in cryptocurrency, then you can successfully turn it into a fairly kind of niche countercultural thing that has much less impact than it otherwise would. So it's somewhere between the good scenario and the bad scenario. I'm obviously hoping for the good.
So what does it take to become an asset, to become a cryptocurrency on Coinbase, to add your technology to Coinbase?
We basically have a test of legality, right? We check, do we believe this is a security? If so, it can't be listed on Coinbase, and there's a very rigorous process we go through for that. Just currently, the way the laws are in the U.S., you can't do that, and we acquired a broker-dealer license from the SEC. We're trying to work with them to get that operational, and hopefully someday we can trade real crypto securities. But today, that's not possible in the U.S. at least. Then we look at sort of the cybersecurity of the crypto asset. Do we think there's some flaw in the smart contract, or a way that somebody could manipulate it without the customer's permission? We look at some compliance pieces to it as well, like the actors behind it, and their any kind of criminal history, anything like that. But if we believe it meets our listing standards, basically this test of legality and everything for customer protection, then we want to list it, because we want the market to at that point decide. And it's kind of like Amazon or something like that, where a product might have 3 stars or it might have 5 stars, but if it starts to get 1 star consistently, it's probably fraudulent or it's defective or something, like maybe Amazon will remove it. But otherwise, you want to let the market decide what these things are. So that's generally how we do it. And by the way, more and more of these assets, I think especially low market cap assets, are going to be traded on DEXs through Coinbase. It's not that we don't need to list every asset on a centralized exchange. I think DEXs are really good for the long tail. And then it becomes it's even more clear to people, this is not some endorsement by Coinbase of this asset's good and this one's bad. My belief is there's going to be millions of these assets over time. And so I hope it doesn't make news every time we add one in the future. Basically.
Can government agencies seize a person's cryptocurrency by forcing Coinbase to hand it over? So when you're centralized, they have a phone number to call.
Okay, so this is a complicated topic. If you really want to be sure that this is why people want to store their own crypto, right? With self-custodial wallets, with Coinbase Wallet, embracing decentralization, they want to avoid that. Now, in the US, there is rule of law, right? So we have reasonable protections in place around search and seizure and things like that. Coinbase does, we publish transparency reports on this. We get subpoenas, court orders, things like that from various countries around the world. And there are situations where we have been ordered to freeze accounts, things like that. We have to follow the law. Is no other way to put it. We're a regulated financial service business, and so
if the money is used to break as part of breaking the law, that's what that in a particular jurisdiction, in a particular
right. And then the other thing, sometimes we will actually get court orders or subpoenas that are overly broad. We've seen, so they need to follow due process, right? And so we've seen some in the past that were well, we need you to freeze this huge number of accounts. And it's well, we'll actually have gone to court and pushed back on some of these and said what is the probable cause, and has the threshold been met? And we've won some of those cases on behalf of our customers. So yeah, it's actually really, it's kind of unfortunate and frustrating. As a large business, you spend a lot of resources basically interacting with inbound requests by all kinds of lawyers and people, and requesting things, and some of them are silly and ridiculous, and you have to push back and say no. And so